The Powers Project.
Portia, how are you today?
You know, Kurt, every day is great that ends in Y. Even on the days that can be trying, every single day gives you an opportunity to change your life and change your perspective. So every day is great that ends in Y. How are you?
Wow. I'm much better after hearing that.
Look, I'm like a Jacqueline in the box. You don't know what you're gonna get, and neither do I. So
Well, that's why I wanted to have you on the show today because I figured, you know, we had discussed when I did your show, we had discussed a few different topics, and I was really interested in one that you hit on, and so I thought, oh, I think that would be really a really good topic to talk about, and I know that you have a very lively personality, and I know that we're gonna have a great show. So,
bring it on like Donkey Kong, Kurt. I'm ready.
okay, so the topic that you spoke about briefly with me was why you date outside of your race. And I found this really interesting because lately I've been on YouTube a lot and probably more than I should be. And one of the things I noticed, particularly with Black men and Black women, there seems to be some sort of war there. You have Black women who are saying, like putting Black men down almost, saying they're not good enough. In fact, to the point where they don't want a guy who has a job. I was like, what? What they mean is they want someone so wealthy that they don't have to work. And I was like, okay. And then you have the men, they're saying now discussing like the relationships, and they're saying, well, if I make this kind of money, I drive this kind of car, whatever, what do you bring to the table? And inevitably almost every one of them says, I am the table. I go, okay. And of course that doesn't help the discussion any. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that, and if you're aware of those things that are going on, and I want to talk about why you date outside your race.
Kurt, that's an interesting. I've heard that before. Now, let me be honest. Growing up, I was always viewed different because I didn't see things the way everybody else saw them. I didn't grow up in a household with two parents that gave me that example of what a healthy relationship was. And no fault to my mother at all. She did the best that she could. And a lot of people from her generation are conditioned to think one way. It's kind of like, like I tell people, water trickles down, not up. So if you're always seeing unhealthy relationships, if you're always seeing women bash their men or women not being respectful of the person who they're with, then you're going to think that's the way relationships and things work. Now, to the point of what you mentioned, I grew up in that environment for the longest time. And so I always thought that, oh, you know, the man is supposed to be the sole provider. The man is supposed to be the breadwinner. And the only way for you to gain respect is to either be his equivalent or beyond. And I had to do a lot of self deep work to unlearn that ideology and acquire a new perspective. The other thing that really shaped my perspective on men of color was my own biological father. My biological father, unfortunately, wanted to run the bars. He wanted to not be a parent. I mean, he divorced my mom when I was 3. And then I watched him literally what I call go across the street and raise a whole nother new family. But then you want to come back on certain occasions. I still see myself as that little girl standing at the front door waiting for you after you said, "Oh, I'll be there in 20 minutes." When we know that in the Black community, that's like never more than likely if you say,
Right.
"I'll be there in XYZ amount of time." So that hurt little girl is still standing at the front door holding her book bag and teddy bear, waiting for her father to come and pick her up. That never happened. And also, my biological father slandered me a lot into my adult life. So he kind of used me as his own personal gain to get assets and things from his side of the family. So for the longest time, I had that view of really Black men cannot tell me anything. Black men don't have access to me. The other thing, when I did started dating when I was about 19, 20, I was a late bloomer, Kurt. I mean, when I was in high school, I wasn't thinking about dating nobody. I was trying to get in, get out. I'm like, okay, is it time to graduate? Because I'm ready to get a job. Let me get out of here. So when I did get into the dating world, some of the black men who I would try to talk to, I was compared to a white woman. They would tell me, "Well, you have everything that I look for in a woman, but you're not white." And a lot of them were, to me, intimidated by my intellect and intelligence. And so, again, it's that constant repeated mirror of what I envisioned growing up as Black men from the way I grew up. And I had to, like I said, do a lot of deep work around that to unlearn that and to acquire a new understanding of why I saw things from that perspective.
Okay, so let me you hit on so many important issues, like one about your father and how he wasn't there for you, but he managed to be there for another family that he
Hmm.
was raising, much like what Herschel Walker is just it was discovered that he was doing. And yet he's this, proponent of the father being in the family, and yeah, he has an entire family he's not there for, and he's there for
Hmm.
another one. So I'm not quite sure how he rationalizes that. What do you think caused your father and men like your father to behave in such a way that they would, you know act like that? I don't,
Hmm.
because I don't quite understand why they would, if you can't, I don't know to say afford one family, but if you're not taking care of one family, why do you have a second one?
So I can see this from two aspects, Kurt. I can say from my personal experience of growing up, my mother has a very dominant personality. And I also think, too, my mother also carried what I call the fatherless daughter wound into all of her relationships. Because my own mother didn't grow up with her biological father present. Her biological father was kind of what I call the gynecologist of the streets.
Hmm.
So he's going around to different households, obviously creating kids, making more instead of being with his six kids that include my mother being the oldest. So my mom goes into all of her relationships at the time with that same father wound. And so, of course, that in terms, you got two adults who have traumas from their childhood and into their adult life trying to be together. So it's two unhealed people, and two unhealed people don't make one healed person. It's like putting two negative batteries together. Not going to get a positive charge, not going to get a positive spark. And so, unfortunately, in communities of color, a lot of Black men, in my opinion, who date outside of their race, who create a whole nother family, they either have a problem with their mother, have an issue by the way that they grew up in a single parent household, or they were compared growing up to another sibling, more than likely a brother, of not being good enough. So you take all of those facets and place them into one adult body, into a household with two broken people, there's going to be chaos. My mom tended to nag a lot. My mom demanded, like I said, she wanted to be the arm wrestler in the relationship of, I'm equal, I have this. So, of course, if you grow up as a man, your ideology is to be the provider. How can I be the provider of the household when you're trying to wear two sets of pants and you won't let me wear one? So, what is the point of me being here? Now, to your other part of the question, how men can go and raise a whole nother family, that I can't really speak 100% on that, but I know for me, it's hurtful to watch literally your father be with a whole nother family. Now, what I mean in my case is my father took better care of his nieces and nephews than his own children. He provided child support, but it's like the money didn't mean anything to me. I wanted you present. I needed you to be here when I was that hurt little girl who wanted her father. Still to this day, Kurt, I get emotional about this to this day when I see the father daughter dances. You
Mm.
know, I see people post them on Facebook now because all of these movements and life events have become a broadcasted special. And when I see the father daughter dances, it still breaks my heart. It still breaks my heart because I always wanted to be that little girl whose father would come pick her up, put out the red carpet, give her flowers, really treat her and show her the example of how a man should treat a woman. I never got that. I never ever got that, but I can still appreciate the girls who do get that.
Right. Is your father still alive?
He is, and that's an interesting story with that. He has early Alzheimer's dementia. I did talk to him on his birthday. To be quite honest, Kurt, with him, I keep my distance because a lot of the things that I would love to confront him about, that's like, beating a dead horse.
Right.
He's not the same person that he was. So for me, it would be a disservice to myself to try to confront somebody who's not 100% them anymore. Their memory is only of certain things. They don't remember all of the dirt, all the trash that was thrown on you. So
Right.
I've had to forgive him for that, but also forgiveness for me means staying away and only allowing certain chunks of him in my life. Like I said, he called me on his birthday. His birthday was June 6th. And I talked to him for about 15 minutes. And I'm like, if I hear one more story about scratching tapes from the 90s, I'm gonna scream. But it was nice to hear from him. Will I go and visit him sometime soon? Maybe. That depends on my schedule. But I've learned to just deal with him in increments and forgive him for the things that he couldn't provide for me. His lack made me stronger. His absence made me be present more in my own life and my future endeavors.
You and I had fathers that are very similar. While my father didn't have another family, he wasn't he provided for us, but his idea of what a father was is someone who put food on the table and a roof over your head, and they clothe you. That's all you should expect. So and so obviously I grew up thinking, yeah, that's not the kind of father I want to be. And he it was what I think, like what I could imagine when you told me that he took care of his other family and was there for them. I saw my father treat his grandchildren like gold. And I remember looking at my brothers and sisters and going, you know, who is this man? Like, this is, if he had treated us even half as good as he treats his grandchildren, I was like, it would have been a different world. And so I can imagine what that feel like. It's got to be even worse because it's another family. So what I'm experiencing is nothing compared to what you've experienced. But you said that you had to go and do some deep work to get past this. So what kind of work did you do to overcome this?
It's funny, Kurt. I actually had a therapist, one that I fired, one out of the many that I fired, because I always learned things after the fact when I was in therapy. I didn't learn anything during, I learned after. But I had one therapist tell me after my mental health breakdown, you've been carrying around anger and resentment of your father's absence your whole life. And I had to sit with that, Kurt, because nobody ever said that to me. And so for a little while, I was like, no, that's not true. But then I started reading some books on, the effects of being a fatherless daughter. And it talked about the lack of self confidence, your lack of self worth, your, having mental wellness obstacles, your relationships can be a little skewed or rocky. And I said, wow, that I check off every box on that. And so when I really started to read up on it, understand, see it within my own life, in my friendships, intimate relationships, I knew I had to do some healing. I knew I had to change my way of thinking because I didn't want to be this broken person. I didn't want to be another fatherless daughter who carries that baggage and rage throughout her whole life and continues to suffer from her own peril instead of doing the deep work and unlearning the way that she grew up and relearning more positive ways of living because it affects you on so many levels. I mean, I've had to really build my self-confidence back up over the last couple years after my mental breakdown. I'm thankful to this day that I started Grew with Portia because Grew with Portia really helped me to step back into my true calling, into my power and reclaim my voice. So just reading a lot, obviously going to therapy, being open about it when I talk to different people about the effects of being a fatherless daughter because there's so many women, Kurt, to this day that are older than me. I mean, I'm 30, but there's women who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who still have that father wound open. Then and they it's hard for them to heal it because they're still harboring that anger and resentment. And it's got to change because it will mess up your whole life, every aspect.
So in dating, or in the dating pool, if you will, you you just haven't been able to find black men who are what you're looking for as far as, you know, their character, their values, and things of that nature.
There's a couple things with that, Kurt. One, I think I mentioned it too. A lot of the ones that I've been interested in dating, they compared me to another race. I have all the check boxes, the house, the car, the good job, everything. But because I'm not of another race that is status worthy, I've been pushed to the side. So that was one strike for me. The other is my values and beliefs and also my morals. A lot of the ones who I have tried to talk to, there were some red flags right in the beginning. They
Right.
didn't even have the basic check marks of, at least a stable place of living, a car for transportation. I don't require a lot, but to me as an adult, you should have a house, a car, a good job of some sort, not still living in mom's basement type of thing, unless, and I know circumstances happen where we have to move back home. But to me, there's some things that are like, no, no, no. And to back to your question, so there's been several things that factored into me not dating black men for a while, especially my upbringing. And then I took myself off the dating market for about 10 years to really do the deep work. Um, and a lot of still black men that I've tried to talk to, I think a lot of them are still intimidated by my intellect, um, and that's okay. Now, as far as the other people I've dated, a lot of them attract to me. A lot of white men attract to me. I don't know if it's more so a fetish thing sometimes. I don't know if it's because of just my personality and my values and the things that I love to do, my bubbly personality. I find more things in common with a lot of them. We can find some common ground instead of sometimes when I've talked to different black men, it has seemed to be an arm wrestling match of who brings what to the table. Instead of I'm looking for a partner, not somebody who I'm playing WWE SmackDown with 24/7.
Right.
And so now that I've done the deep work, I'm more open today. I don't discriminate now. I don't. I mean, there was one of my friends posted a thing on Facebook that said, "Ladies, how do you like your chocolate? How do you like not chocolate, but how do you like your coffee?" And
Yeah.
I was like, "Dark like my soul and my sense of humor." I don't put sugar and cream in my coffee. I drink mine dark. So I don't discriminate. I'd be open to it, but I need someone who can understand one, how I grew up, two, are not still plagued by either mother wounds, not feeling good enough. They've done the deep work too, And when I'm asking you follow-up questions on what's wrong, you're not getting defensive. I want to know what's wrong so I can help you because I care. And you know, that's another thing too. There's a lot, to me, in the African American community, there's a lot of healing that still needs to transpire. And a lot of people are too afraid to address those issues. It continues to be a finger pointing match, a
Right.
finger pointing losing match of, well, she said this, he did this, et cetera, et cetera. Why is it the constant back and forth instead of us coming together, learning and hearing each other's differences and going from there, appreciating what somebody is doing for you, learning to question yourself when you're being triggered like, oh, maybe it is me that's having this issue, instead of it's always everybody else, because it's not always everybody else. We have to take accountability for our own actions. And that was something I had to do for the longest time. You know, when I was off the dating market, I had to really understand, okay, Portia, when I take myself back into that arena, what am I going to allow? What am I not going to allow? And I had to say, what I'm not going to allow is people who are unhealed like I was, people who are not open minded and can have honest, open, transparent conversations with me about what's triggering them, what's bothering them. Tell me if you have an issue with my success. Just be that blunt, because how can we really work together if you're harboring anger and resentment towards something that I have no control over, only to an extent? But, you know, to the point, now I'm more open. Today, I'm more healed. I mean, I'm a work in progress. We all are. You know, we're kind of like cars. You know, we have to get our tune ups every once in a while
Right.
and all that stuff. But today, I'm more open to giving men who look like me a chance, as long as they check those boxes of being open, honest, and transparent.
Well, you make some very good points, but before I tell you that, I got to tell you what gay guys say when they're asked, how do you like your women? And he goes, like my coffee. I don't like coffee.
You ain't missing nothing. I mean, you know, one of my friends is like, "Oh, I can't drink coffee because it keeps me up." And she's like, "Oh, I drink decaf." I'm like, "So you mean sad coffee, depresso 2.0?" Like, so anyway, I digress.
So one of the really good points that you bring up is that's one of the things I noticed when I watched him having these discussions. They're not really discussions. It's like a battle. They're trying to up the other one. You
Upscale,
know?
yeah.
Yeah, and so and they don't. And you're right. It comes because they're not healed, even though they think they are. And it doesn't matter how well educated you are, how much money you make, what you own, or any of that stuff. If you aren't healed, you're still damaged. You're still like you're not going to find true love when you're so hurt yourself that you can't get past the things of your past, basically. And so that's a very good point. And if they started to work together as a team, because every time I've ever been in a relationship, that's the first thing I tell people. Look, I want us to be a team. I want us to work together to create a great life for us together. A lot of people say, "Oh, that's what I want too." They're not willing to put the work in. They want you to do all the work, and then say, "Oh yeah, we're a team." Like, no, that's not how a team works. Exactly. It's not one person does all the work and the other person just reaps the benefits. So in the black community though, there's there's a lot of things that happen to the black community because of systemic racism and that created this uh, problem, if you will, of having a shortage of men. Like when there are far more black women than black men because black men are in prison or in jail over something stupid that was, you know, like and it's like, I don't know, drug, some simple drug related incident, which was designed to put black men in prison. That's it, and that's what it really comes down to. And I know that's a oversimplified statement, but it's a lot of truth to that. So now you have a shortage of black men in the community. So then the black men who are in the community realize that, hey, I'm I'm a rare thing, so I can play all I want because you know it, I'm I'm just one of the few that are here, and it gives them that wrong sense of what's important or what should be important in life. I think, and so I know the black community suffers because of that, and then with black women thinking that from what I've seen again, and I will tell you that um, I grew up in a poor, like I grew up in the projects. So, there were black women in my life, my whole life. I mean, I look at the old, like when I see black women, like the mothers, I still get in line whenever they say do something because that's what my mom taught me. If Mrs. So and so says you do this, you do it. It's like yes, ma'am. That's how I was raised, and and I see with black women today, they're so wrapped up. And again, this isn't all of them, and this is a generalization. So please forgive me. I don't mean to say that all black men or all black women are this way. But what I've seen is a lot of them focus so much on material things when you're worried about how much a man makes, and again, I get that they should have certain things, like a job or a car or something, so that shows that they care about themselves and that they have some drive in them, so that they don't just want to be a bum their whole life. But when you start, questioning, how much money they make, and demand that you're a CEO, or demand that you drive a certain car or own a certain house or something like that, I think they're looking at the wrong criteria for having a partner. I mean, it seems like there's a better way to find a partner other than
Mhm,
material things.
mhm. Oh, yeah. I agree 100%. But again, Kurt, I think a lot of them, the way that they grew up, if they grew up in a single parent household without their father present, a lot of them have taken on what I call that curse that their mother has passed down to them. Then, of course, when they're in elementary school and primary school, a lot of their teachers don't look like them, so that shapes their thought pattern. Then you figure when you start seeing success on from a little kid, you see success as being a basketball star, anything in entertainment. And as we both know, entertainment is not what we think it is.
Right.
Reality TV is not reality TV. So
Right.
again, when you're growing up in that type of environment and household, that shapes your perception on how your relationship should be. And a lot of them unfortunately never become freed from that imprisoned ideology that was set on purpose.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So I again, and this is one of the things I see. I don't think just in the black community. I think in women as a general is that they all want to get educated. They all want to, in fact, there are more women in college than men. They want to have their education. They want to make, have their great job and make that money. And it seems to me as though what they're doing is that they're trying to become what they want in a man, and yet a man doesn't want the same thing in a woman that a woman wants in a man. And so they sometimes go, I don't understand why men don't want to be with me. And I'm like, well, they're looking for something different than what you're willing to offer. And I don't think anybody should become something other than what they want to be. So if those men are insecure and can't handle the fact that you make more money or that you make money and have a great job or whatever, I don't think that you should dumb yourself down, or or make yourself less than just to please a man. That would be silly, to say the
Well, I
least.
can tell you, Kurt, from growing up, this is another thing that falls on Black women, that you have to always wear the strong Black woman cape. And that is a negative connotation. I don't care what anybody says. To me, that is a catalyst to a lot of Black women having mental wellness obstacles in the later part of their life, because you're taught as a young girl, get your own stuff, don't depend on a man for anything. So of course, what does that tell you from a little kid? Oh, I got to do everything myself. So what does that lead to? Extreme independence. And extreme independence, as we both know, is a trauma response to the lack of not having a father. Because if, to me, if you grew up in a household where there was two solid parents, I don't think you would have that ideology placed on you from a young age,
Right.
unless you grew up in poverty. And we both know poverty creates a slew of interpersonal issues within you. Scarcity mindset,
Yep.
sometimes the crabs in the barrel, lack of self-worth, depression, anxiety, because success seems out of your reach. Versus if you grew up kind of in a stable household, whether it was middle class, etc., you get to see that success is available. And
Okay.
so a lot of women go, unfortunately, down that path with that wear your crown 24/7, and really it's doing a disservice and ultimately leading to their downfall.
So, Portia, let me ask you, when when guys compare you to white women, for instance,
Mhm.
do you think that they somehow see more value in her, even though she might be less educated, make less money, or not have a job, or but just because she's white, um, that makes them seem like they're more successful, or
Mhm. Oh yeah. Kurt, growing up, that's a status thing. I mean, that goes back to when I was growing up, watching different celebrities throughout my life. A lot of successful Black men are always with white women because it's a status thing. Unfortunately, Black women have been placed to the bottom of the totem pole. You often would see Black women labeled as the angry Black woman. She's too loud. She's too this. If she has a name that's a little different, oh, her name is inappropriate. Her name doesn't fit this. And then songs, the music. Let's be honest, music is a big thing in African American culture. And so when you grow up hearing songs like, I don't want me a Shaquita, I want me a Becky, instantly that ingrains in so many African American men's mind. And then their friends influence their thought pattern, what they see growing up. A lot of them, when they're learning about careers and that, a lot of them are trying to go to the NBA or become somebody in the music industry, a rapper, producer, etc. And what do they see? Majority of those men are married to white women. So again, it's a status thing. Now, how I feel about it, I have no problem with interracial relationships at all. My biggest thing is, if you're going to be with somebody, be with them for who they are. Love them for who they truly are. Not be with them as a stab at me or a stab at other women who look like me because you have a problem with your mother. That's what I really truly believe, that a lot of African American men who date interracially. Now, I'm not saying all of them. I'm
right?
I'm thinking that there's a collective who date for the status because they have a problem with their mother. They think that they're going to get further in life because I got a Becky on my arm, because I got a Christina on my arm, instead of, oh no, I can't have a Shaquita on my arm. Shaquita on my arm would be my downfall. And really, that can be twofold
So,
because, go ahead.
don't you think they would? It seems to me like they would, like black men would be sympathetic, knowing, that, saying that the angry black woman, because certainly, there's been, that whole image of the angry black man too.
Hmm.
They must know what that feels like. So I'm kind of curious as to why they would put that on their own women, on black women, when they know what it feels like to be called the angry black man.
Because it's easier to point the finger
Mm,
Again, instead of taking ownership, instead of doing the deep work and unpacking why you have a problem with Black women. Is it, I mean, the way I view it too is if you're going to be with somebody who doesn't look like me, what really is the excitement? Is it a sex thing? Is it a skin tone? And we all have obviously our preferences. That's fine and dandy, but what does it really boil down to? What is the root of this?
right.
So to me, a lot of them won't do the deep work. It's easier to point the finger and say, oh, well, she looks like this. She looks like a horse. She looks like a 304, all this other stuff. Instead of saying, my mother remarried a man who molested me. I had a friend who said that to me, a guy friend who is African American. So right there should tell you that there's a lot of, to me, a lot of African American men who have baggage like that they refuse to unpack. And unfortunately, that's society's prescription that they feed to people. Fake it till you make it. A
Right.
lot of them do. But to me, how far is that really getting you? How far does really faking it till you make it gather you until the fake juice is all dried up and then what do you have left?
Well, that, and I think that's combined with what you said earlier, is that they're not willing to do the deep work. So you can fake it till you make it, but if you're not doing the work to make it, you're just going to stay a fake.
Mhm.
And like you said, that dries up at some point, and and you realize, oh, you're 40 years old and you haven't gone anywhere or done anything because you're kidding, not just everyone else, you're kidding yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. And again, it's the status. Unfortunately, I think too a lot of African American men, kind of the same way that some Black women grew up without a father, they don't see the bigger picture of what a relationship should be. And so, in turn, they're always chasing something instead of being more specific as to, I want a partner who can lift me up when I'm down. Instead, you want to ride or die. I don't want to ride or die. You want somebody who has gold flowing hair and can give you mixed kids, but what does that mean anything? You
Right.
can have all these kids, but if you're not going to be present to take care of them, what's the point? So again, it's going back to doing that deep work and really unpacking the root. Because there's a lot of Black women, single Black women who are my friends that are amazing. They're amazing at what they do. They make 6, 7 figures, but they cannot find a Black man who matches what they want. And I'm not saying that some of them aren't still working through some unhealed things from their childhood, but still, again, a lot of these Black women are single because they don't wanna put up with the crap.
So while you're saying that black men will often, not always, but often date white women or be with white women because it's a status symbol, is the same does the same apply to black women who date white men, or do you think that's less common?
I don't think it's as common. Now, I'm not saying that a lot of Black men too who date white women are doing it for the status, but I think there's a strong collective because of the way they grew up. Now, for Black women who date white men, and that's another reason why I think a lot of times Black women continue to date outside their race, because my own father, I'll be very honest about this, he called me up furious when he found out my first boyfriend was white. The first thing he said was, I don't know what's wrong with you. Don't you remember what the white man did to us? All this other stuff. Kurt, I hung up the phone. Click. I don't want to hear that. He's not the cause of all the traumas and slavery that other white people have done to us. So
Right.
why am I going to hold this man who wants to be with me for who I am to that same standard? That's unfair. And again, it goes back to that unhealed part of a lot of men. And back to the question, I don't think as many Black women date white men for the image. I think some do, but I believe a lot of them date outside because it is true love. It is that real hard connection that they can gather from them because they're a partnership
Right.
not uh, what I call the stair climbing competition ideology.
Right. I think I had a thought here. And I lost it, but it'll come back to me. When you were talking about your father, and I'm having a brain fart. Sorry about that. I'll
Well, and
come I'll come back to it when I remember what it was I wanted to say. But you go ahead. You were going to say something.
I can add more to that too. You know, when Black women are criticized for any decision they make, and it comes back to the way they grew up too. Because I can tell you from the household I grew up in, Black men were heavily criticized, whether they were too dark, they were too this, they were never, quote unquote, on a positive pedestal from the way I grew up. So that also shapes a lot of Black women's perspective on how Black men should be. And then to have my own biological father question and scrutinize my dating preferences, that also steers me away from my own race, because it's like, well, wow, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. So what direction do you go? And I think a lot of Black women now are being true to themselves and no longer abiding by those values and morals that were fed to them as children, and they're finding their own footing and walking in their own path of this is what I want in a relationship, in a partnership, etc.
I know the thing I was going to say is that one of the things I find, and this is throughout society as a whole, is that everyone wants to be a victim. And it's like what you were talking about, your father saying, you know the white man did this to me, the white man did this to us, and you don't remember that, and they want an apology. And I remember there was a woman who wanted to be on my show, and what she did was she would go around to different companies and teach. She would teach about race issues and things. And what she would do is she would have white people sit down and write an apology letter to Black people. And I said, I don't mind having you on the show as long as you don't mind a little pushback, and me challenging you on what your concept is. And she said, oh no. She goes, if you're here to placate to the white man, then I don't want to be on your show. And I said, it's not about placating. It's about the fact that, I don't necessarily agree with your take on things. And she goes, well, that's because you're white. And I said, well, here's what I'll tell you. If you were to come into my job, if I worked for somebody and you came into my job and told me that as a white man, I must write you an apology letter, I said, I would write that apology letter as soon as you write an apology letter to me, because straight people haven't been very kind to gay people. So do you think that you should have to write me a letter? And she didn't know what to say. She just, because I was like, how ridiculous is it for me to expect straight people, because of the things that happened to gay people over the centuries, that nobody alive today had anything to do with. How crazy is it that I would expect straight people to write me an apology letter? And I think it's so easy to play the victim,
Hmm.
and because then we don't have to take responsibility for ourselves. And again, it comes back to what you keep saying, doing that deep work that needs to be done. And you don't have to do it if you blame other people, because it's not your fault, it's everyone else's fault.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it's way easier and applaudable too.
Right.
Because let's be honest, on social media, the minute you put that fodder out there that, oh, I'm bashing this Black person for this, this, and this, it gets over 100,000 comments
Yep.
of back and forth bickering. Oh, I didn't like that person then. So it continues the thread of the tear down, versus where is that person who's gonna stand up and say, you had this experience with this person, and that's your opinion. That's your experience, not everybody else's. So instead of you bashing them on social media, talk to them and say, hey, I didn't have a good experience with you, and that's okay, but I wish you the best. Where is that type of compassion and love? And to your point, that lady, I'll be honest, I don't know who she is, but I don't agree with that type of ideology and thought pattern because, again, not every white person is the cause of Black enslavement. And if we're going to go there, I'm going to be very honest. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of enslavement of Blacks doing it to other Blacks in
Right.
the corporate spot. And I don't want to open that can of worms because I've gotten into heated arguments about that. But I digress there. So if we want to really go there and talk about starting to write apology letters and stuff, we all need to write an apology letter. We all need to open the can of worms, do the deep work, and say, Black men, Black women, I'm sorry I viewed you in this way because whatever transpired as your upbringing, whether your parents were toxic, whether you you were hanging around the wrong crowd and they influenced your thought pattern, whatever it is, it starts with you. It's easy to play the victim in this society, and it's like, unfortunately, in the Black community, it's applaudable, and I'm tired of it. I'm personally not about that victim mentality because I used to be that person where I blame this person for my downfall, I blame this person for my lack of this, but it boiled down to me. I
Right.
had to do that work to really unpack, why do I feel victimized by this? And now I've become victorious over that mindset. So again, it's about doing that deep work. And a lot of people are too afraid and too prideful. That's another thing in Black culture. That pride is what will eat you alive. Because again, how do you expect to really thrive in every area of your life if you won't even unpack you? You don't even have a healthy relationship with you.
Right. I
So I don't wanna go too deep, but I hope that answered it.
No, it did. It did. One of the things I think is the problem that we have is what we're being taught in these days, and that, like
Mhm.
you said, and it's almost glorifying
It
ignorance,
is.
and we glorify, anytime something happens, you look again, YouTube, I see it all the time. It doesn't matter if they're black, white, or whatever. Anybody who throws a temper tantrum in Burger King or McDonald's or whatever and starts throwing, people just eat that up and they go world star, and they get
Yep.
and it's like, this isn't really a joke. This isn't something to be laughed at, because it's when, as a people, when we have the emotional mentality of a 12-year-old and we're 40, there's something wrong with that. When we think it's okay to start acting like a child and throwing things when we're an adult because we didn't get our way or somebody offended us or something, and we don't know how to behave like an adult, there's something wrong with us as a society as a whole. And this isn't just a black thing, this is a white thing, this is I mean,
Mhm.
I've seen all races behave this way, and it's becoming more and more, um, I guess, accepted
And yeah.
as a behavior that shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's acceptable again because people don't know the backstory. It's easy to post a video up and assume, oh, this person didn't put their order right. But let's be honest, people are overstressed, people are overworked. So you don't know if Brianna, who's packing your burger, just had a miscarriage before she came to work and she doesn't have PTO time to take off, so she had to come in. Maybe she has one or two kids at home, or maybe she's a full-time caregiver of a parent. So you don't know the backstory of what somebody is going through. So then you see that, okay, I miss putting an onion on your burger. Well, I'm overstressed and overworked. I'm going through some personal things. So I missed that one step. And because I missed that one thing, and maybe because somebody peed in your Cheerios earlier that day, I'm the cause of your whole rage and outrage episode. So now here comes the cameras out. So instead of us taking the cameras out, Where is that person that says, hey, 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 let's stop this.
Right.
Let's sit down, take a breather, everybody clear out for a minute and really unpack it. Have that heart to heart emotional moment with people. And I'll be honest, Kurt, I actually had an experience. Now, I used to work for the hospital, and I've never ever seen this type of behavior in the hospital I worked at. And I was shocked. I was applauded by what I saw. Young girl she was one of the valet attendants. I'll say this really quick. I guess somebody, one of her supervisors, said something to her that she didn't agree with. Now, mind you, this lobby is very echoed spacious. I'm sitting there with my mom. We're about to leave, and she's saying, F this, F that. So it's echoing off every wall. She looks like me. So instantly I'm looking like, oh, great. Is something about to happen? What's going on? I wish that I would have taken that moment to take her outside and talk to her. Nobody did that. Everybody was so quick to judge her and say, oh, she's about to get fired. She's about to get written up. Oh, it's another black on black situation. It's another black, angry black woman. Nobody took her outside to say, hey, what's going on? Let's take a walk. Let's take a breather. Let's get you back to your normal self. This isn't the right setting. If there's something going on, let's have that human connection and compassion. Instead, it's so quick for us to run and put somebody online to bring our views up and to bring our followers up instead of taking that human moment and helping this person work through that moment of whatever was going on and help them to come back to themselves. It's atrocious to me.
Do
And
you,
again, it's that lack.
do you think she would have been open to listening to you? Because one of the things I notice with people who lose their temper that fast, where they go from 0 to 100 and their anger meters just broken off the charts. I mean, sometimes they're just so angry, they're not listening to, and they're just all they want to do is lash out.
Mhm.
And it's hard to as I said before, it's easy to love people and to be kind to people who are kind,
Mhm.
but people who are hurt tend to hurt other people, and
Mhm.
it's more difficult to want to put yourself in their shoes and help them. And even when you do, and they're still yelling at you because they don't want to hear what you have to say.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a difficult situation, that we're in. I think.
I agree. And I think, again, it's about your approach and perspective. I would have taken her outside and had her walk with me for a minute and just let her vent. We've become people of we listen with the anticipation to talk
Right.
instead of listening for understanding and trying to find a way to get you from all the way up here at 100 back to your normal calm, getting to that root again, doing the deep work. It's so easy to just lash out at the simplest thing instead of just saying, my pet died. So I'm really unhappy. It's like vulnerability has been categorized as such a weakness in our society and it's sad because that's how we connect is through those stories of vulnerability. I've gained more respect, Kurt, from telling people, yeah, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I got 3 different diagnoses and the third one stuck. That's the joke that I lead with. And I've gotten more respect from people when I've told them that, yeah, I still have mental wellness obstacle days instead of trying to pretend like I'm infallible.
Right. And and again, that's the right approach. You're this whole, I've got to be strong and I got to act like I have no flaws, and never admit to having any flaws or ever doing anything wrong. I know that a lot of it, our leaders act that way, and so we think it's okay. Our Many of our leaders and people that we look up to in society are acting that way,
Hmm.
and it sends the wrong message, I believe.
Oh, yeah, because it continues to insinuate the fake it till you make it.
Right.
And to me, we have to let go of that toxic ideology because to me, no wonder why mental health is on the rise continuously. because it's like you're living a double life. And I tell my friends, if you have to take a mental health day, take it. Don't continue to work yourself to the brittle bone, because then that's going to start causing more problems, more on a physical front. And it's like, when do you have to get to that physical point of your knees are hurting, your stomach's hurting, you know, you're starting to grow hives or whatever, for you to take time for you?
When you took time for you and did the deep work, where did it bring you? Like what happened to where you could go, I like I like who I am. Like what was the end of all the deep work? What was the result of all the deep work, I guess I should say.
The result of my deep work led to me loving Portia for who she is. Because for the longest time, Kurt, I hated who I was. I hated being a Black woman from all the stereotypes. I hated being a woman for all the stereotypes that women get. You're too emotional, you're too this. But then I'm plagued by being both a Black woman and a woman. So it's almost like you have two nooses against you. So
Right.
when I did the deep work, I'm like, I love this person who's resilient. I love this person who's giving. I love this person who never gives up. I love this person who continues to strive forward despite all of the obstacles placed in front of her. I love this person who is Portia. Hence why now I tell people I am Portia the producer, and I own that, and I feel it in my soul. My soul is free. I don't feel like a prisoner of society's prescription of you have to be this person 24/7. Because let's be honest, Kurt, when we start off in our journey of working, we're not always taught about entrepreneurship. So when you go into a job and you take on the quote unquote role, you embody that role, that becomes part of your identity. And then when you get fired or you leave, that part of your identity is fractured. So again, you still don't know who you are. And that's what I wrestled with for the longest time. That lack of a title was a part of my self-worth for the longest time, until I started doing the deep work and embodying, oh, I love this about me. I'm actually more intelligent than what I give myself credit for. I can have a conversation about anything. I'm more creative than what people dim me to be. So I had to do that deep work in order to really bring those positive qualities and attributes to the forefront and silence those negative ones that society tried to cover me in. So I'm a lot happier, I'm free, and I'm Portia the producer.
Well, out of everything that we've talked about so far, what you just said is the most important thing that's been said since we started the show, because it comes down to having to accept yourself and love yourself. Because I was just like you in the fact that I hated myself because I knew I was gay. No one else knew it, but I knew it. And I hated myself because of, again, all the stereotypes that
Hmm.
come with being gay. In fact, because no one knew I was gay, I heard them. I heard my friends say them. I heard my siblings talk about it. I heard my father talk about it. And I remember, you know, I remember being so upset with what I would hear that I became this hyper masculine male that said, I'm going to be able to kick anyone's ass because if anyone ever calls me those names, that's what's going to happen. Of course, I never ever intended to come out of the closet back then. And and I would pretend to love myself. I was one of fake it till you make it.
Yep.
I was faking it till I made it, but I wasn't making it because I wasn't doing the deep work. I wasn't accepting myself. I was just pretending to and if you asked everyone around me, they go, oh yeah, Kurt loves himself. But I didn't. I hated myself because I wanted to be anything other than what I was. And it wasn't until I accepted myself and became okay with who I really am. Not just okay, but I love who I am now. And it's because, like you, I had to do the deep work. I had to get to that point where I could love myself. And I truly believe that you hit right on it. That's the key to us being able to change as a society, as a people, that's how we get to understand. Because once you love yourself, you you become what I the first thing I noticed, I wasn't nearly as angry as I used to be, about because I would be mad at everything. You just had to look at me the wrong way. And and I would get like blow up immediately. And this is, I'm well past 30, mind you. And so that kind of behavior that I was talking about, where mentally or emotionally I had the emotional maturity of a 12-year-old. I was acting out as a 12-year-old in well past 30. And if I'm being honest, 40, maybe even a little later. I'm a slow learner. But anyway, but it was once I did that hard work, I started to love myself. And as you said, this is a process. You work on this every day. It's like working out. You can't just, if you want bigger biceps, you can't just go to the gym once and do a set of bicep curls and go, oh, my biceps are bigger, and think they're going to stay there like that. It's not how it works. It takes a lifelong commitment to always wanting to better yourself and be the best version of yourself, as you had said earlier. Um, so, so as I guess my I'd like to wrap this up with, because I always want solutions to things.
Hmm.
How do we get black men and black women and white women and white men to understand that, you know, being in a relationship is about being a team? How do we get them to that point where they want somebody of quality, not just somebody they can have a one night stand with, or someone
Hmm.
they can use, or someone who will take care of them because they make X amount of dollars or things like? How do we get to that point?
One, it starts with you. You have to do that deep work to really uncover what you really want in a person. Really define what an ideal partner is. Really define too what triggers and emotions you still need to work on. It starts with us first. Second, become a good listener, because we tend to live in a society where we listen with the anticipation to talk instead of listening with the anticipation of understanding and gaining understanding. Three, number three is the most important. Be in a healthy relationship with yourself first. Because how can you truly thrive in any relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship with your money, your relationship with your coworkers, if you don't have a healthy one with you? it
That,
it starts with you altogether. And once you start doing that deep work and healing, the doors will open, things will become clear, and you have to work at it daily. I mean, Kurt, you hit the nail on the head. It is a daily practice and a daily commitment. You're not going to practice one day a week of self love and then expect you to understand and love yourself. No, you're going to have some off days, but let those off days be an on point as to something you need to work on even
right.
harder. And then too, surround yourself with people who hold you accountable. That's another key point, because I have people in my corner, obviously shout out to Dawn, my soul mother, who
Hi, Don.
hold me accountable for my actions. My other coach, Captain Courtney Shock, both of them continue to provide that tough love, what I call it, but it helps me to be better. It forces me to not be complacent with where I am, because it's a learning process. To me, the day that you admit you're old is the day that you die. And
Right.
it's the same concept. You have to continue learning and growing no matter what in order to be the best version of you. That's what self-love is.
I agree with you
Mic drop.
100%. Exactly. I would like to say this, and just to elaborate a little bit on what you had said. It's so important that when you get to that point of loving yourself, that when you meet someone, that you align yourself with someone who has the same sort of values, the same priorities, those things that matter. Because if you don't, it's never going to work out. So I tell people, when you find someone that you say, okay, I'm thinking about having a relationship with this person, then you need to set the dynamics up of that relationship at the very beginning. What does this relationship look like? Men often like to say, I'm the protector and the provider. And the woman's like, okay, I'm good with that. And this is more so my generation and my parents' generation, where the woman stayed home, took care of the kids, the husband went out and worked. But what happens is that when the economy goes bad and the husband loses his job, the woman's not like, hey, we're a team, let's do this. No, that wasn't the contract.
Mm-mm.
Contract is, you're the provider and the protector. Now you go get your ass out there and find another job. I'm doing my share, or I'm leaving you. And so I find, and I've seen that in so many relationships, because
Mm-hmm.
that was the dynamic that was set up at the very beginning. How about being honest and instead of trying to impress each other, say, look, I want to be in a relationship where we're a team, and no matter what, we stick together, because the best relationships I've ever seen in couples are those who are they're teammates.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen, and I'm going to actually have some people on my show who have these amazing relationships that you would think they just met each other, the way they love each other so much. It's I don't want to say it's almost like because it's not. It's amazing. It really
Mm-hmm.
see that. Um, and what happens is that when you love yourself, you don't just accept anything. Like one of the things, like even little things, you'll start to notice. Like if someone starts to cut you off in the middle of your speech, it's like, or whatever you're saying, that's a lack of respect. And you'll notice that and you go, oh, I don't like that. And I'm not going to let anyone do that to me. And you let them know that ahead of time. Because if you don't say something, then they're going to expect you to always act that way. So you need to tell them up front, hey, I'm not good with this. And take care of yourself. If you said this, and if you take care of yourself, everything else falls into place.
Mm-hmm.
Put yourself first. That isn't narcissistic. That's loving yourself. Narcissism is the exact opposite of self-love. That's all it is. So you're amazing.
Well, thank you. I mean, and to add to one more point, being selfish is not what we think. Being selfish is self love, especially when we're trying to grow and develop.
Right.
Sometimes you have to step out of your comfort zone and away from those people who you always were with in order to flourish and to embody the true person you're supposed to be. Let go of the fake it till you make it culture. Let go of the constant happening to be somebody who you're not and be in the in crowd. Be an individual, because that's what we were born to be. We're all uniquely tailored beings on this complex train of life. So why not embody the true you instead of somebody who's already been scripted before?
With that, we're going to end it with those wise words. So, Portia, thank you so much for joining me. I knew I was going to have a blast with you and enjoy this, and so thank you so much. And um, you just are full of words of wisdom, and I hope people hear what you had to say.
Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate it. Peace and hair grease, sir.
Okay, folks, thank you very much for joining us, and until next time, stay safe, take care, and love yourself so you can love others. Bye. All right, hang on one second here.